Welcome to the finale of AM2R. Now this door over to the right can be used to take you to a hidden part of the Hydro Station, if you so desire to go back and get any items you might have missed. Now this broken Chozo statue here, this is both wonderfully symbolic and also a great nod back to the original game, where there was a broken Chozo statue at this point in the game that had an ice beam in its possession, in case you didn't have one from earlier in the game, because, frankly, why would you hold on to it? But it's kind of important that you have it. There's more. Now I will say, AM2R doesn't quite nail that moment compared to the original, because in this game you can just look at the map anytime and see how many Metroids are left in the game, and, well, that kind of ruins the surprise of suddenly more Metroids that would normally happen here, but yeah. So this is the Genetics Laboratory, a space created by the Chozo where, long and short of it, they created the Metroids. For what purpose, though, is unknown. But on a related note, and kind of skipped over this, we're fighting larval Metroids. Sort of a big deal, considering that these were the Metroid form that were weaponized by the space pirates in the first game and all of the Prime series. As is Metroid tradition, the way you beat them, you freeze them, and then pop them full of 5 missiles or a super missile. They're pretty easy to deal with, in all honesty, although I will say if they grab you, you are in for a world of pain because they will drain your health extremely fast. But with that, only one Metroid remains. And I don't think they're going to be happy to see us. Queen Metroid, the final boss of AM2R, and the only one of its kind capable of reproducing. This is truly the mother of all Metroids. And it's time to take her down. So the Queen has a couple of attacks, and really only a couple. The first, of course, being that head bonk that we've seen a few times thus far, like so. She does get faster and faster as she takes more damage though, which makes her tougher to avoid because the timing gets much more strict. The other attack being this stuff. That's what we'll call it, I really don't know what else to. Phlegm? I don't know, perhaps. That can drop helpful pickups for us, like health and ammo refills. The most efficient way I find to deal with them is to use a charge shot, aim lock, and a few regular shots to deal all the damage necessary. So if you keep up with that, you'll be pretty top down on resources for this fight, which is a good thing because Mama Metroid here does a lot of damage and even has health that scales with how many regular missile pickups you have, but notably, not super missiles. So if you wanted to, you could really game this fight by having very few missile pickups and a ton of super missiles to give her a lot less health. But that's kind of lame, so I'm not going to bother doing anything like that. But yeah, overall, this fight's pretty simple. Just a few more shots, and there we go. On to Phase 2, that is. You didn't think it would be that simple, did you? Well, it's still relatively simple, but the arena has changed and we're no longer fighting on the same ground as before, and Mama Metroid really wants to push us back away from her nest. Now there is one other small thing about this fight that I don't really get a chance to show directly, but that does just happen sort of incidentally a couple of times, which is, if you shoot a super missile at the Queen Metroid's face when she is trying to head bonk you, she will actually recoil and not finish the attack. The timing for this is very tricky, however, and since she gets faster and faster as she takes more damage, it gets harder and harder to actually pull that off. It's certainly not necessary to know, and honestly, I didn't even know about it the first few times I did this fight, but it is something. Yeah, you can see she's getting way more frantic as time is going on. Really trying to push us away from where we were. The unfortunate thing is that the fight really doesn't change that much from here on out. We've really seen all of Queen Metroid's attacks at this point and everything she's capable of. That doesn't necessarily mean it was always going to be like this, though. In true late-game AM2R fashion, there were additional attacks planned for the Queen Metroid that were never able to be implemented. One of these was an acid spray on the ground and the walls to force you to sort of space jump, or I guess bomb jump if you're doing low percent, to stay out of the way and be undamaged. Basically, think the Zeta's acid breath, but way meaner. The other was an earthquake roar that would have caused rubble to fall from the ceiling. You kinda might be able to see where the association is going with that attack and some of the observances we've made in the late game, just to put it bluntly. That attack, of course, strengthening the idea that it's the Queen Metroid sensing that her children are dying and causing the earthquakes in her rage. But enough about that, we're finally moving on from the insides of the genetics laboratory itself, and we've been pushed out pretty far into the caves. And at this point, we're being hunted. We're cornered. And thus we see the end of the Metroids. And yet, it seems as if something has survived. There's only one reason the Queen would have been so adamant to keep us away from her nest. I think I know why. and thus brings a close to AM2R. As I've said probably before in the past, I really like this game a whole lot. Is it perfect? Absolutely not. I've said before that I feel like a lot of the late game content is a little underdeveloped, and in particular the final boss, while I do think it is a fun fight, is a little too simplistic for my tastes. But even with those flaws, however big or small you might consider them, the controls are fluid and responsive, the soundtrack is phenomenal. Have you been listening to it? I hope you have, otherwise, well, then you haven't been listening to me, and that's just a crime. The level design is so well built for using the moveset that you have, even at base, without any upgrades. And overall, the game does a decent job at rewarding your sense of curiosity while staying true to Metroid 2 and its linear nature. I know I, for one, am going to be keeping this game very close to my heart for years to come, probably. And I hope this series has helped anybody watching maybe gain a new appreciation for the game if they maybe didn't enjoy it when they were playing through it. Or maybe you did like the game and you learned something new from watching this. Or maybe you never played the game at all and you just wanted to see what all the hubbub was about. Now, we're not done with this game just yet. There is a bonus video in the works that'll be going up eventually. There's a few things I wanted to show off that I didn't get a chance to during the main series, and a couple of side adventures, and I'll just leave it at that. But until then, I've been Final Insanity, and this has been AM2R. I'll see you all next mission.
The last Metroid is in captivity. The galaxy is at peace.